There comes a time in every man's life when success no longer feels like success, when fame becomes heavier than the price he ever thought he'd pay. And for Will Smith, the man who once made the whole world laugh, dance, and believe in dreams, that time came quietly. It didn't happen on one stage or in one scandal. It happened slowly, silently. And today, at 56, his story feels less like a Hollywood fairy tale and more like a tragedy. He was the man who had it all: the charm, the money, the global respect. From Fresh Prince to Men in Black, from Ali to The Pursuit of Happiness, Will Smith was more than an actor. He was an emotion. He represented joy, confidence, the kind of success every kid from a tough neighborhood dreamed of. But somewhere between the spotlight and silence, between fame and the fragile heart of a man, something broke. The tragedy of Will Smith isn't about failure. It's about how success can slowly destroy the soul that built it. Let's rewind. It's the early 90s. A young Will Smith, full of life, laughter, and an energy that could light up an entire room, becomes a household name through The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He wasn't just acting, he was telling a story millions related to. A story of a boy trying to belong, to rise above, to make something out of nothing. The world adored him. The jokes, the music, the attitude, all of it. Then came Hollywood. Bad Boys exploded. Independence Day conquered the box office. Men in Black turned him into a global superstar. He could do no wrong. Every movie, every smile, every interview, people saw perfection. They saw a man who had it figured out. But the truth? Behind that perfection, Will was always afraid. Afraid of losing. Afraid of not being loved. Afraid that if he stopped smiling, people would stop caring. That fear, the invisible kind, would become the first shadow of his tragedy. Hollywood loves an image, and Will Smith's image was spotless. A loving husband, a wise father, a man of discipline, faith, and positivity. The Smith family became a brand, the perfect modern family. With Jada Pinkett Smith by his side and talented children like Jaden and Willow shining early, they looked unshakable. But inside that mansion, it wasn't peace. It was performance. Will tried to hold it all together: the career, the marriage, the fatherhood, the expectations. He believed that if he made everyone happy, he would finally be happy too. But happiness built on control isn't real happiness, it's exhaustion. In interviews years later, Will would admit that his idea of a perfect family was just an illusion. He said what we had was a beautiful structure, but a fragile soul. It's strange how silence follows success. After so many years at the top, Will Smith wasn't being celebrated, he was being watched. Every move, every gesture, every word, analyzed by millions. He wanted to grow spiritually, emotionally, mentally, but Hollywood doesn't allow quiet evolution. It demands entertainment. It demands headlines. As Will explored meditation, love, and self-awareness, tabloids twisted his words. When his wife spoke of entanglement, the world mocked them. Memes replaced admiration. And suddenly, the man who had given the world laughter became the internet's favorite joke. He didn't fight back, not at first. He smiled through the pain. He gave interviews about healing, forgiveness, and emotional intelligence. But behind the smile, a storm was building. The storm of a man who spent his whole life pleasing everyone but himself. It was the Oscars, the most prestigious night in Hollywood. The night Will Smith would finally be crowned Best Actor, a dream he chased for decades. But destiny had other plans. When a joke about Jada's hair was made, something inside him snapped. He walked up to the stage, and the world watched in silence as Will Smith did the one thing no one ever expected. He slapped Chris Rock. That one moment, just a few seconds long, ended the illusion of perfection. The world didn't see pain, they saw rage. They didn't see years of bottled emotion, they saw scandal. He won the Oscar that night, but he also lost something far greater, his
Section
peace.
5. After the slap. After the slap, Will disappeared. No interviews, no appearances, just silence. The man who once spoke so loudly about love and strength went quiet. Because when the applause stops, that's when you hear your own pain. In the months that followed, Will spoke of reflection, of shame, of healing. He admitted that he was broken long before that night, that the Oscars didn't break him, they revealed the cracks he had hidden for years. People debated his apology. Some forgave, some never would. But deep down, the tragedy wasn't about forgiveness. It was about realization. Will Smith realized that in his lifelong performance of being strong, kind, and perfect, he forgot how to be human. And now, at 56, Will isn't the man he used to be. He's quieter, more withdrawn. He talks less about success and more about peace. The laughter that once filled stages has turned into long silences between words. The man who once told the world, "I got this," now says, "I'm learning to let go." Maybe that's the real tragedy. Or maybe it's the beginning of something
At
honest.
56, the tragedy of Will Smith is beyond heartbreaking. Part 2. The world moved on. The memes faded. But Will Smith didn't move as fast. After that night, he retreated into solitude, away from the cameras, away from the noise. No red carpets, no talk shows, just quiet. For a man who had spent decades surrounded by sound, laughter, applause, and praise, silence became his punishment, and perhaps his teacher. Friends said he barely spoke for weeks. He spent time reading, meditating, walking alone in nature. For the first time, Will wasn't trying to entertain anyone. He was trying to understand himself. In one of his few public comments, he said, "You can't protect your image and find peace at the same time." Those words felt like confession, the kind that comes only when everything has fallen apart. Living in public means living with pressure. Every face he met expected a smile. Every moment of sadness became a headline. For Will Smith, being Will Smith was both a blessing and a curse. He once said he created a character, a perfect version of himself that everyone loved. But somewhere along the way, the character became the cage. He couldn't break free from the expectations. He couldn't say, "I'm hurting," without being judged. He couldn't show weakness without being called fake. So he carried it all. The betrayal, the guilt, the loneliness, behind a famous grin. Until the night he couldn't anymore. And that's when the tragedy deepened. Not because of the slap, but because the man behind it was crying for help in a language the world didn't want to hear. Months later, Will Smith began to speak again, softly, humbly. He appeared in a few interviews, not to defend himself, but to admit his flaws. He talked about ego, he talked about childhood trauma, he talked about the little boy inside him who still wanted to be loved. He said, "I was always trying to be perfect so no one would hurt me." That sentence, simple yet haunting, revealed the real Will. He wasn't a villain, he wasn't a hero. He was just a man who'd been performing for so long he forgot to rest. And while millions judged him, few understood the truth, that sometimes the brightest lights blind the performer first. In private, he began therapy. He reconnected with spirituality, journaling, and travel. He spent time in remote places, places where no one shouted his name, no one asked for selfies, and no one expected him to smile. There, away from the noise, Will started rebuilding something he had lost years ago, his peace of mind. The world saw Will and Jada as one. But behind that image was a complicated truth. In a later interview, Jada revealed they had quietly been living separate lives for years. No public divorce, no press conference, just quiet distance under the same roof. It was shocking to fans, but to Will, it wasn't news. He had known. He had chosen silence. Because sometimes people stay together not out of love, but out of loyalty to a dream that no longer exists. They stay to protect their legacy, their children, their name. And Will did exactly that. He protected the family brand even when it meant sacrificing his own emotional freedom. He kept smiling even when the house didn't feel like home. The tragedy of Will Smith isn't that his marriage struggled. It's that he spent years pretending it didn't. And when truth finally came out, he didn't fight it. He just nodded, softly saying, "Love is messy." 3 words that sounded more like surrender than wisdom.